All right, we've come to chapter five, class five, sorry, of our course. And today I'm going to talk about the emergence of the Hong Kongers, and which I believe is, of course, very important. And if you remember my chapter, I explained that I believe the reason for the Hong Kongers to emerge was really because of this divergence between people in Hong Kong and what's going on in China and how they saw themselves differently. So it was a time of great chaos, you can say. In the 60s, many things happening in China and that spread to Hong Kong and Macau. And as a result, the people in Hong Kong had a choice to make. Do we agree with that? Do we follow with it? Or should we just continue our life, as we plan to, we move to Hong Kong, really because we want to have a more stable living and escaping from the some of the chaos happening, for example, in China. So that became a big question, and it's not an easy one, as you see, at least for some people. And so this is a very important chapter, and we're going to look at more of the Chinese history today because of that reason. Because I'm arguing that it's really because of what happening in China that the Hong Kong people need to make a choice. And also, if not understanding what's going on in China, it's hard to understand why there would be a riot in Macau and then followed by one in Hong Kong. So, but picking up from what we left off last time, I'm going to talk about the 1966 Star Ferry riots, which was mentioned in the video that you saw in the last class. That riot or protest um, was more about the rise in fee, the hiking in fee of the Star Ferry. The Star Ferry is still in operation today. It was the main transportation for people in Hong Kong to travel from one side to the other, say from the Hong Kong Island to Kowloon Peninsula, across the Victoria Harbour. So for many people, this is the truly essential way of going to work or continue with their lives because, as you remember, it was Hong Kong Island that became the city of Victoria first. Now, by the time the city of Victoria is no longer so-called after the Second World War. So now it's like Hong Kong Island and Kowloon Peninsula. But all the major companies and government buildings all along the coast lining the Victoria Harbour on the Hong Kong side. But Kowloon and then later also new territories were the places where most migrants came to live. So if they had to work in a company on the Hong Kong side, they need to take the ferry. In those days, they also have a big vehicle ferries as well. So they all can, just like when we go from Vancouver to Victoria, like from Tsawwassen Terminal to Victoria, you can go on. You can drive the vehicles on the ferries. So it was the similar situation. At that time, you have passengers as well. You could have vehicles. But in 1966, after some considerations and not enough consultations, the fee was raised from the first class fee, raised from 20 to 25 cents by 5 cents. So for the people that make the decisions, the company, the government officials look at these application, it was a small amount. But for many, that means that every day they need to pay 10 more cents to just go to work. It was a lot. So what happened is that when the hike was announced, people start protesting and complaining, and it was not very common for the Hong Kong people to protest. So the 56 riots was really a big shock to many. But usually they're also not very keen on, taking on political matters and going out. But the 60s, because of that hike, people start protesting. And really started with a single protester called Su Xiaozhong who staged a hunger strike. Now, many people were unhappy about it, but his hunger strike action really triggered more protesters to join, including a student, okay, and other hunger strikers. And when the hunger strikers were going there announcing their purposes and their making speeches, people start gathering. And at that time, when it was really not there, they did not do anything. They would basically just um, say that we're going on hunger strike, we're going to protest this decision. But when they attract the crowd and the crowd start getting violent, you can say, or disruptive, uh, the police came in and arrested them and charged them. And so then the big riots broke out. It's disturbance caused by the few of them who were actually quite peaceful. It led to eventually one death and several hundreds wounded. So it was quite an event because it didn't last long. It's just a few days. But because of the um, kind of disturbances, it was quite a serious event, and it was also witnessed by the rise of Elsie Elliott, the elected urban council member, who was a um, British lady that uh, really fought for you can say, civil rights and movement in Hong Kong. And so she collects signatures, she protests about this hike, and got 20,000 citizens to protest this hike. And of course, that she was later also blamed for, the resulted riots. Now, so what happened is that people protest and then got violence and but why we want to talk about this because it's just before the 67 riots and people sometimes compare the two, saying that the 67 riots were very similar. It started because of the oppression of the Hong Kong government on the working class, and that's why people rose up. So I just want to make it very clear differences. On one hand is that this event was quite spontaneous. It was really a reaction to the hike and hunger strikers and attracting people. People start, getting frustrated, and then with the arrests happening, then more riots broke out. And so it was kind of like that, a spontaneous, you can say, protesting and rioting. But it was also very important to notice that even the Chinese media or the you can say leftist media, the Dai Gongbo at that time was like a Chinese or major Chinese media in those days. So they whatever they announced, okay, now at that time the official Chinese forces would be the Xinhua, the Shenhua, the Xinhua, the New China Agency, which was operating like a de facto embassy. The reason why there was no Chinese embassy in Hong Kong is that China did not recognize Hong Kong as a separate, city or country. So for them to have an embassy in Hong Kong is like admitting that Hong Kong was foreign to China. So they would not want to do that. So they set up this news agency. So there's like like a Associated Press to dispatch news. But wherever they dispatch, usually reflecting the official positions of China. So that was more the official outpiece, okay, mouthpiece of China. But the Taiwan is very close because it's also a major, it's like Manwui and it's very close to China. It's also a very major leftist newspaper. So if something is being announced on Taikong or Manwui, that means that those are reflecting the thoughts of China, that they may not want to use the official mouthpiece. For example, if they condemn Hong Kong government, if they did not come to the point of wanting to condemn as a official voice, so they will use these major newspapers to condemn the government. So you can kind of see the differences, but they're still reflecting the thoughts of you can say the CCP operation in Hong Kong or the government of China. So in this case, Daikong also protests and I mean criticized the people, and they were saying that you can kind of read that they would, in support of the Hong Kong government, to quickly restore peace against the rioters. So they call these people rioters as well. So they didn't agree with them. They didn't agree that okay, you're not happy with it, but you didn't have to go around and smashing places and so on. So they were on the side of the Hong Kong government. So this is the biggest difference between, because later in 67, there's stiff opposite. So it shows that the nature of the two riots were very different. And the look of it is also very different because the 66 riot is very spontaneous. It's just anger. And sometimes news about the hunger strikers going on. So it's very sad for these young people who initially just going out to use a strong but peaceful way to protest the hunger striking. And the student, okay, later on will be found committing suicide home, and people now they still question whether he committed suicide or it was some kind of pressure from the Hong Kong police or even murder. So that part was still a mystery, and the Zhou Xiaozhong, the original initiator of the hunger strike, now has become a monk. So I think he probably ended. I can't remember, but I remember for one time he became a monk. If I don't remember wrong, but sorry, that part I suddenly cannot recall directly. I know that it was a long time of sadness and struggle for these early protesters after the riots. But as I was saying, the main point was that the Chinese media and the Chinese government did not support this. So it was very different from the 67 riots as we see later. So next I want to change to China. Now China, as mentioned, regarding the migration, there was a lot of campaigns going on in China. Now, on one hand, you can think that China was under a lot of pressure. One thing we did talk about was Korean War, when North Korea decided to attack South Korea, but they wanted the support of Russia, and Russia wanted to pull China in as well. So, and Mao, under a lot of different consideration, decided to help. Out of either he wanted to make sure that China had a big role to play in communism in Asia, as well as a more pragmatic concern about Americans coming close to the Chinese border. Because you have to also remember at that time, Taiwan under Chiang Kai-shek rule was very adamant about and vocal about returning and attacking China with American help to reclaiming China. So for China, it's not just, rhetoric can be potential dangerous because they knew that the Americans didn't like them. Americans didn't like communism. So for them, they would help. So as a result, Mao always come. Now China is against the world. And because the Korean War the UN was involved in the Korean War, and China was on the other side of the fighting, so against the UN, and the Soviets were always kind of trying to control China, or show that Stalin always trying to show that he was the big brother of Mao. So Mao wasn't too happy. So Mao was trying to show that he could bring motivate the Chinese people to do things. Okay, so he was okay. He can still motivate the Chinese people to go against the world, to show rivalry to Moscow. So he would often try to manipulate the Chinese people. And One time he was uh, in the during the first, you can say, 5-year plan when China wanted to modernize. um, he would motivate people to go to factories, to work in the factories, and then to increase production of steel in China and all that. So, and that part was quite a success because people would pay, people go to the cities, they work there. And in the city, in the factory setting, you set some standard. If you give them enough support, they can meet it. Right? And in that way, by government support, you were able to speed up industrialization. But on the countryside, it was not the case. Countryside, Mao they want to collectivize farms, want people to produce a certain quota and give it to the country and be motivated. Um, Turns out that just like in Russia, farmers were basically quite individualistic. They were like individual entrepreneurs. They do their own ways. They make the decisions, and they want to have surplus. Okay, if as long as you don't tax them too highly and allow them for the land. To own the land and run the land, they were able to produce. Now but Mao may be too confident about his power. He want to uh, push the Chinese farmers to work in a certain way, collectivize the farms. But remember, the CCP gained power in China is really because of that promise for poor farmers or people with no land, right? This whole thing about land reform and targeting the landowners was a big sell for the CCP in China. But now after they took the land from the other people and gave to the rest, and now he say you want to collectivize the land, you want to tell people what to grow, you want to tell them all the surplus should go to the country, leave you some, it doesn't work. And usually when you do like that, people became not productive. So the countryside people resist, and they didn't work really well. So Mao was unhappy about that. So he wanted to show who's the boss. So he announced that, okay, we're going to have this 100 Flowers campaign in 1956 that encourage people to come and criticize the government, or put this way, have comments about government. So his original plan was that when people start voicing, they would come out in support of him. But turns out it was the opposite, because when people felt that, maybe they're too much confident in the new China, especially you can say that the literature, people from the scholarship, the scholarly people, the writers, the poets, and those people that this communists used to be able to, secure the help from. Because of the United Front. So they're usually close to the leftists. But they felt so comfortable that they, after some initial hesitance, they came out and started giving comments. And turns out quite a bit of it is against, the leadership. That means Mao was implicated. They will stop criticizing, the government doing certain things not right, some direction. And Mao was furious. And so because it was the opposite, he was supposed to get this support so that he can push his party to be more radically left. So he didn't get it. And so he came out and actually started saying that, oh, now you guys all came out, so I'm going to target you. So he said, I'm actually not, this is he used the word Yang Mao, which is the double opposite to come a different wordplay on conspiracy. But he said, I'm not trying to trick you to come out. I'm just trying to lure you. His phrase is lure the snakes out of their holes, okay? So it's not a conspiracy. It's just that, I gave you the chance and you came out, with your bad thoughts and with your bad intentions. So now I know who among you are the righteous, okay? You're not the leftist. So he was have 180 degrees change and suddenly purging those people who came out and spoke against him. So the party was uncertain about what to do. The people were scared. Now Mao is targeting them. So, but Mao, even though he did not get the support, he pushed on with his ultra, you can say, leftist approach, which means that he's going to go for ideology. So he believed that ideology is going to push the people to do whatever it takes. Okay, so it may not sound possible, whether it's scientifically or logically or mechanically, but human, you can say, Mao believed that human strength is going to prevail. My leadership skills and my charm is going to push the Chinese people to do the impossible. So if I ask them, if I motivate them enough, they can use different ways to overcome. And we have a big population. That's what Mao thought. And you have such a big population, we can do it. And a lot of it is to compete at that time with Soviet, because the Soviets trying to compete with the world, the Western world, saying that I'm going to surpass the state in a certain time. And Mao wants to show the Soviet that he could do better. Whatever you can do, I can do better. And I can catch up with the British in about 10 years, and then I'm going to be on par. So I'm going to surpass the British in, say, 10, and then I'm going to be on par with the States in 20. So he will be talking about those, and it's going to push the Chinese people. And two indicators of successes would be the food production and the steel production. So that's how Mao is going to measure. He's going to say, okay, everyone, we're going to do this. We're going to produce more food. We're going to produce more steel, and then we're going to surpass the British, and then come to be very closely, match up with the America, with United States of America. So that would be his intention. Now, the next will be a video. I think it's best to tell with the video, and then it ended in disasters. But rather to tell you, what he did to lead, I'm going to show you this video, which is going to explain a lot of things.
100 million peasants were recruited from all over the country to work almost with their bare hands on building projects on an epic scale, constructing roads, railways, dams and canals. For Mao, there was no doubt. The great leap forward to a communist society had really begun. The slogan "Dare to think, dare to act" became the official line of the party. Mao symbolically went out to work sites to lend the peasants his support. To underline the fact that he had rallied the whole party behind him, he was accompanied by Liu Shaoqi, the party's second in command, and Zhou Enlai, his closest comrade in arms. Liu confirmed his support for Mao by saying, "Hard work for a few years, happiness for 1,000. All means were used to mobilize the masses and to stimulate revolutionary zeal. In an extraordinary campaign, Mao identified a new enemy. Sparrows were accused of eating the crops. The Chinese were called out in their millions to prevent the birds landing. As a result, the sparrows died of exhaustion and gave way to a new enemy: insects. They proliferated and ate part of the harvest. This absurd campaign was followed by another step towards radical collectivization. During a journey, Mao saw a banner in a field praising the merits of the first experimental People's Commune set up in Henan province. He declared with enthusiasm, "The People's Commune will be the bridge that will carry China towards the socialist paradise." The saying was taken up in all provinces, and in just one summer, thousands of communes were formed. They consisted of up to 2,000 families. There were even plans for enormous communes, combining up to 10 or 20,000 households, which would be headed by cadres who were totally dedicated to Mao. The working days started at dawn and finished after dark, accompanied by music to the glory of the Great Leap Forward. As the basic unit of the future society, the Commune experimented with a completely new way of life. Here, everything was designed to immerse the individual in a collective life geared towards production. All private property was abolished. Houses, animals, land and production tools became collective property. Nurseries and free, compulsory schools liberated women from their maternal duties so they could work in the fields. The family unit disappeared, and children were made to live by the new rules of collective life. The individual was nothing more than a cog in a big machine. As in a barracks, men and women were separated and grouped in dormitories. Sexual relationships were regulated. The aim was to force the peasants to take their meals in the commune's collective canteens. In some of them, they even abolished money. A system of work points was established. Food was distributed according to merit, i.e., each person's capacity to fulfill the production objectives. The notion of wages disappeared.
Kill! Kill!
The party cadres became the officers of the people's communes, which were transformed into real barracks. Every day, the peasants underwent military training because the masses had to be mobilized for the national defense. In the people's communes, peasants had no right to free speech. Their skills weren't taken into consideration anymore. Everything was decided by the authorities who mostly knew nothing about the subject. They decided everything. The distance between each rice seedling, the type of seed, the amount of fertilizer to be used. Land suitable for one type of crop was used for another. As a result, the peasants became totally demotivated, and poor harvests caused the first food shortages. But Mao always wanted more. To increase agricultural production, he made communes compete against each other. The ones that recorded the biggest harvests were rewarded in ceremonies organized by the party, while the inhabitants of the communes were terribly short of food. This was a world where achieving record production, called launching a satellite, went hand in hand with announcing falsified figures. The cadres were caught up in an escalating spiral. They showed Soviet advisors a field of wheat where the ears were so extraordinarily close together that they supposedly supported the weight of 6 people. The photo was on the front page of the People's Daily. Everyone was fooled, and those who weren't were too scared to say it was a con. Lying became common at all levels of the hierarchy. The figures for agricultural and industrial production were falsified throughout the country to meet and even exceed the targets set by the party. As a consequence of these exaggerations, the tax paid in grain by the communes was calculated on a false basis. In some regions, the result was that the state demanded almost all the amounts really harvested. To make matters worse, the spring harvest in 1959 was disastrous. The famous debt was the one that China had contracted with the USSR for the purchase of hundreds of factories that were delivered ready for use. Beijing undertook to repay Moscow in the form of agricultural produce. Mao wanted to accelerate repayment, even if it meant people starving in the countryside. In some regions, people really had nothing to eat. In other provinces, the shortage of food gave the cadres who distributed it the power of life or death over the inhabitants of the commune. In the spring of 1959, Mao's frenzy took another form. The great helmsman demanded 100 million tons of steel in the next 3 years. Since the production of the steel factories was insufficient, the peasants also had to contribute to the effort. They made small blast furnaces out of whatever they had. Officially, China started producing millions and millions of tons of steel. In reality, all that came out of these foundries was an unusable metal. These small blast furnaces worked day and night and mobilized tens of millions of peasants for nothing.
So, as you can see, the video really nicely summarized what really happened there. It's a disaster because of a radical leftist movement by Mao, understanding that he could motivate people, but did not understand that humans are not machines, and you could not push them, to a point of not, getting anything. Just like if I say, if you're not going to, everyone's just going to get a same mark, okay, for the course, okay, and I expect you to give your best, and it just doesn't work with human nature. Human nature is that you work harder, you want to gain more, and if you can make more surplus and you can get a better time, a more, a more comfort life, you work harder. This is how people are motivated. But just by ideology, just by revolutionary zeal, you can only push people to do that much, and at the end, human nature will take over. But also, as importantly, technology, actual knowledge gained from experience is important as well. It's not just slogans. Now, so what happened in China is that the Great Leap Forward, this campaign started by Mao to push China to produce and to develop to the next, almost say next level, fell miserably and ended in a big famine. And it has basically all the elements of a perfect storm, because by killing the birds using a very silly, stupid method, create a pest problem, rats, bugs, and so on. With the sparrows gone, all this came and eat the grains more. And then overconsumption in the beginning of the Great Leap Forward, and then later, because of the declining productivity, and they still claim that they produce that much, oftentimes they gave all the food to the government. And so starvation came. And then worse is that this production of steel, trying to meet the numbers of the steel quota, but drew people away from the farm. And while they're supposed to be working on the farm, they went to make steel, useless steels. And worse is that they use, they use the tools, useful tools, to make steel, because they need iron somewhere. And when they had no access to iron they put in their useful tools and parts and so on to create still just not useful. So it is a perfect sample of anti-productivity. You are really wasting all this time and effort and to create garbage out of useful tools. So this is one extreme example of this stupidity of the Great Leap Forward. And Mao was blind to all this, and he was all about motivating, asking for what he needed. He believed that his invincibility because after all, he beat the KMT when the KMT was about 4 times as strong as CCP, right? But this time it failed, and unfortunately, it failed. The result in the death of not him, but the rest of the country. Now, some debate about the numbers. Usually, when you look at the figures, they say 20 million. China admit that it was a disaster because later on when they consider problems, they say it's a big problem. And Liu Xiaoqi famously said that it's 70% man-made and 30% weather or a natural disaster. So it was definitely known to be a human era disaster. But the numbers, there was some debate about it. Some say less. Excuse me. See. Excuse me. Now, but if you look at the figures provided by China, you can kind of have an idea how bad it was. Just look at the overall population growth from every year since you can say 1954, there will be about 10 million or so, 10 to 20 million growth of population each year. So it was quite a decent growth. From 1957 to 1959, a total of 26 million growth. So basically 13 million growth a year. But if you look at 59 to 61, the 3 years of when the Great Leap Forward triggered this massive famine and death, the population of China decreased by 13%, 13 million. So even if you don't take into account of the growth, the natural growth, saying it's supposed to be like 10 million growth, okay? So if we take that into account, if there's supposed to be 10 million growth a year, so 2 years should be 20 million, or even if a bad year, it'd be 15 million growth. Now, not only did we not see the 15 million growth, we saw a 13 million decline. So what does it mean? So 20 million is actually probably not a exaggerated figure. It's probably right. So 20 million people die. Think about this is more people than a country, a small country. So 20 million people die because of this radical leftism. And the Chinese leadership knew about it. And one of the most vocal one, Pang Dehuai, who was never willing to just listen and remain silent. And he was the field marshal of the Korean War on China's side. And he famously wrote a poem in 1958, even before the Great Death starting to happen. He said, grains scattered on the ground, potato leaves wither, strong young people have left to make steel, only children and old women reap the crops. How can they pass the coming year? Allow me to raise my voice for the people. So they were complaining about this. They knew what's going on. And Mao has to shoulder all the blame, basically, because it was his campaign. And at the end of the Great Leap Forward, when it failed and many people died, Mao needs to resign from the role of the president of the country. He remained to be a chairman of the party, which unfortunately means that he still had influence over the military, but he resigned from being the president of the country. And the new president, Liu Xiaoqi, as mentioned, talked about the 70% fault on human and 30% fault on the weather. So, so Mao hated them, and Mao will be looking for a chance to pay back, to regain his power because he had become like a demigod, in China, and everyone, he had been used to everyone listening to him. He'd be invincible. He could motivate the crowd. Now he could not take that failure. He could not take the shamefulness of being blamed. So he's going to come back and get his revenge. But meanwhile, in Hong Kong, they saw what happened. They heard what happened. Many people did not know the extent, okay? But some people were able to go back home at that time, and according to their witness, the things were bad. They went home, they had some food, they had to give them all away because the people were so hungry. Even in Guangdong province, where there's big production of food, in the Pearl River Delta. So things were bad, and they knew, and they also knew from the people coming from China at that time. Now, for some time, because after the closing of the border, there would still be people trying to, climb through the fence and pull down the fence and come over, as you saw in the video. But the great, influx of people stopped because the border was strictly controlled. But during this time, more and more people coming, and it seems like on the Chinese side, they were also allow some people to go, possibly because they knew the situation was so bad, they didn't try to escape, they would be dead, okay? And so the Chinese Hong Kong government realized that and had to send them back, but this is what happened at that time when they knew what's going on, and they trying to, they need to send them back, but they're trying to help at the same time.
Almost bursting at the seams, the colony of Hong Kong is invaded by new floods of would-be refugees from the mainland of China. As there's only shantytown accommodation for many of the million refugees already in Hong Kong, there's no room for the 4,000 a day who have tried to come in lately. Helicopters fly at first light, looking for Chinese who have entered the colony by night. Police round them up, for they've got to be sent back. So limited are the resources of Hong Kong that if the refugees were allowed to stay, famine and cholera might result. Yet as lorries take them back to the frontier, the Chinese have the sympathy of the people. Food, cigarettes and medicines are showered on them. Fear of approaching famine is thought to be the reason why so many have fled from their native South China, which normally no more than 50 a day are allowed to leave. Now the communist farming system has all but broken down, and hundreds of thousands are hungry victims of the Red Series.
So you can kind of see what's going on. It was the total chaos. And when people came, the Hong Kong people, most of them were also recent migrants, if they're living in those areas. And so they had the sympathy. They knew that what's going on. They heard about it. They knew that they were desperate. So they tried, even though they knew Hong Kong could not keep taking in that many, because if the Hong Kong government opened the border again, it will be unstoppable, that influx of people from China. So they had to implement this border control, but the people keep throwing food and other materials for them because they knew that they were really having a bad time in mainland China. So that was the kind of early signs of things are going to come. But Hong Kong people already felt that, this is, and many of them start feeling fortunate because, yes, New China seems to be offering a lot of new hopes, but, things are getting suspiciously crazy over there. And people start killing sparrows using the most inefficient way. People are making stew in the backyard, and news about famine, purging and revolution. And, many people left for Hong Kong because they want a, good life, or at least a peaceful life. It's not like this. So when they heard about that, they were kind of concerned, so, and some of them start feeling fortunate that Yes, Hong Kong is, difficult. Life's difficult, especially in the 60s, but at least we are not hungry. At least we are working. Yes, as mentioned last time, it's an employer's market. We had to work really hard to make ends meet. And if we don't agree or we don't work according to what the employers want, we can be easily replaced because there's so many new migrants, right? So, but still, we can find work when we work hard. And so at least it's not like starving to death. But things got even more crazy in China, mainly because of Mao. Now, sorry, I need to go through all this Chinese history with you. I know this is not a course on China, and I have chances to talk about all this in other courses, but I do need to tell you why, because the 67 rise is closely related to the Cultural Revolution in China. Now, Cultural Revolution, in a nutshell, is triggered by Mao writing, spreading news that they are counter-revolutionary elements in the government, in the highest level of government. So what Mao wants is that people to agree with him and start purging. So he wants people to go up and start purging elements against him. Mainly, he was focusing on the, you can say, more the practical elements in the CCP. They would call them rightists, which you can probably be right. They're more right inclining, so they're more practical. They're not agreeing with what Mao is doing, the radical leftist movement, and so they want to right the ship. They want to be more practical. He wants to send people back to the countryside, the farmers, away from the collective farms and work hard, just produce, and want the countries to be more on the more sane, track. So these people, the government led by Liu Xiaoqi would be the main target of Mao. And Mao said, okay, there are these elements, and he was very smart. He didn't name them. He just said they're elements. So young people should rise up against the establishment, against the old generation, because they're gone soft, okay? The young people, we need young blood. So there are two sides, okay? On one side, the government, there are people hearing about what Mao wanted and try to gain power through this new campaign of Mao. So they rose up, they dress in their in green and the red wristband, and sometimes in white, and so they form the so-called they announced the so-called forming the kind of a new army beside the army, which is called the Red Guards. So these Red Guards kind of like the SA, in Nazi Germany. So they get the young people motivated and say these people is going to crack the old guards, or the bad elements of the party. And of course, there's a lot of people want to support Mao because in the government they want the jobs of the older generals, of the older leaders. They want the job. They want to use Mao's influence to push the other party to gain power. So these people, including Lin Biao, the general, Jiang Qing, his wife, pushing this, and Zhou Enlai is not really on the leftist side, but he was too scared of Mao, so he was always kind of helping Mao, do whatever Mao want him to do. And on the countryside, they asked young people to rise up, to dress in a certain way, as you can see in this picture. They went to Tiananmen Square and to be inspected by Mao. Mao said, go and find these people. So basically, it's a massive witch hunt. And so how do you define counter-revolutionaries? Basically, everyone has been purged. In the previous campaign, the Zhengfan campaign, the anti-rightist campaign, after the Mao's announcement for them to voice their complaints, right? So there shouldn't be anyone left. But Mao said you can work hard and find them. And anyone who had any connection with the West or anything that seems to be not following Mao's direction would be purged. So it means anything. Whatever you can find, you can say that you are anti-Mao, okay? For example, you say something that you're quoting someone that's not, sanctioned by or approved by the leftists, you are against it. For example, if you are at that time, Mao really liked the writers Lu Xun. So everyone is quoting him. Okay, if you quote someone else, that means that you're against Mao. Okay, so things like that. So anything can happen. If you're a translator, that means that you learn English. That means that you are a counter-revolutionary. If you are a monk or you are used to or a Christian, you are purged because it's against a communist ideal. So everyone will be implicated. Of course, Mao always got sanctioned, some people targeted. So the so-called the 5 black categories include the landlords, the rich peasants, rightists, counter-revolution, bad elements, anyone could be implicated. And there's huge, massive purging happening in China. Everyone is trying to. Now, why would people support this? It really has to do with the, some is for defense, some is for trying to get what they want. For example, if you are a low-ranking academic that you want to come top, but you know that above you, ahead of you, there are a few more academics who do better than you, older than you, more experienced than you. So what do? You go and find faults about them. You say that they are anti-revolutionary, they used to write things against Mao, against the party, so they should be purged, they should be sent to the countryside. Some cases, they should even be purged openly and die, okay? So you start coming up with accusations and getting people, you put yourself this red guard clothing, you say you are a soldier of Mao, you want to purge the black elements of the party, so you protest and then you try to get their position. So a lot of people actually would do that throughout the country, and some basically just to try to protect themselves, because if you don't join them, you'll be targeted. If you stay home, if you want to be a more moral person, this is all false accusations. If there's a witch hunt, so I'm going to speak against them, I'm going to protect the weak, and then you end up being the target yourself. So over time, you'll be chaos. Now, Mao only want to target those who took his position, including Liu Shaoqi and those who spoke against him, for example, Pang Dehuai, as you see in these 2 clips. But he also allowed the whole country to do it because he knew that if he only targeted the government officials, that but those people still have power, right? So it's difficult, dangerous to target them. How about if they fight back? So Mao wanted the whole country in their frenzy. So it opened up. So every level of the country is doing that. And everyone, and Mao is also very smart. He always kept his card close to his chest. So he didn't really reveal, So people were questioning, was it the Red Guards who controlling Mao? Is it Jiang Qin controlling Mao that's doing this? Is Mao behind all this? He kept everyone questioning. He didn't want to do it. He had all these henchmen doing the dirty job for him. And every time, when the old guards came and asked him, Chairman, do you want me to resign? Is it something that you want me to do? He would just say, oh, no, this is a spontaneous movement, just for the better for the country. So he was safe. And all the people were really happy to do dirty works for him. But he was still in firm control. And especially because in the country with the young people, it's becoming a personal worship. So Mao became like God. And the young people believed that Mao could only be right. So Mao, the country's problem is because of people not agreeing with Mao. So the country got crazy, and Mao got what he wanted. He purged his political enemies using these young people's revolutionary zeal and purging.
Throughout 1967, the massive purge that Mao had set in motion focused on the topmost echelons of the party leadership. The outspoken old marshal Peng Dehuai, at Mao's side since 1928, until he dared to criticize the chairman's great leap forward, was dragged out and publicly vilified. To his Red Guard accusers, Peng was a three antes element, wasteful, corrupt and bureaucratic, disloyal to Chairman Mao. Jiang Wen-tian, Mao's predecessor as party leader in the 1930s, was damned alongside him. Both men had devoted their lives to the Chinese Revolution. Now, they have no rights. That summer, Red Guards converged on the walled park of Zhongnanhai, where Liu Shaoqi had his official residence. For weeks, they kept up a loudspeaker barrage, until finally Liu was forced to come out and confront his accusers. His public humiliation was accompanied by an inquisition of tens of thousands of his former associates. Liu himself was expelled from the party forever, and he and his wife placed under arrest.
Anyone who had ever been in contact
Now, remember, this is the head of state. Think about you stage a mob violence and mob campaign so big that even the head of state has to, had no rights to come out and then kicked out a party, imprisoned, and eventually died in prison. And when he died, they didn't even dare, because it's kind of embarrassing that the head of state died just like that, and they have to cremate him using a different person's name. So only later they find out that it was actually Liu Shaoqi's cremate. So it was that bad. But Mao got what he wanted, and other people also got what they want. For example, Jiang Xing's wife always kept jealous of Liu Shaoqi's young and beautiful wife, Wang Guangmei, especially when they were meeting with, for example, foreign dignitaries. One time they was in Indonesia and meeting with the Indonesian leaders there, and Wang Guangmei was wearing this pearl necklace that Jiang Xing was really jealous, because how come I'm not going? How come Mao is not going? Because at that time Mao was not the country's president, right? So Jiang Xing was really jealous. How come I'm not going at that time? I can't remember where she was, but anyway, that trip, it was not because it was more foreign minister. Maybe Mao was still a president, but Mao didn't go. Sorry, I probably should be 50s, I think, that trip. But anyway, Wang Guangmei was wearing this and looking radiant, and Mao, Jiang Xing was furious. He was jealous. So when during the Cultural Revolution, when they were purged, they make sure the Red Guards put on this necklace made by ping pong balls, ping pong balls, just to ridicule her. See, you were looking so radiant, arrogant at that time during the trip to Indonesia. Now look at you, okay? So a lot of the personal, you can say, greed, vengeance involved in this Cultural Revolution. That's why it's so successful, because when it comes to witch hunt, there are people who join for different reasons. People who want personal gains would lead it. People afraid of personal safety would join them, and the people who had higher morality would try not to be involved and end up in prison or dead. And during that time, many of the best people in China actually lost their life. So this is one of, not only is really chaotic, but also and put the country back. Just remember, if you are a rocket scientist, you're working there, or a scientist, put it this way, a working in this government agent, if you're not protected, say, by Mao, because Mao found you expendable, then you'll be purged and replaced by who? Replaced by someone not qualified, someone just using slogans and say the right words. Okay, that means the country will go backwards. And at that time, many of the physicians were purged, and so at that time they are famously they're called bare feet doctors. Okay, some countryside people who just play the role of doctors, and were the real doctors are countryside being re-educated. So the country is going really backwards, economy collapse. But the really good people died. That was the kind of one of the saddest time. For example, the earliest international champions from China of the table tennis, Guo Tuan, Zhang Yongling, they both died because they went overseas and they were purged. People jealous of their successes. People want their role, and they said that you went overseas, you must be, engaging in spy espionage and spy activities, and they were purged. They were, remember purging is like getting you out, publicly humiliating you, oftentimes physically abusing you, making you in one position bow down for hours. I just saw what happened to Pang Dehua and Zhang Wentian, and those are party leaders. Top party leaders, marshal, top-ranking generals, and so if they had to go through that at that age, think about if you're younger, you know what kind of beating you're getting. So many of them commit suicide. They commit suicide, the champions, because they couldn't stand the purging. Lao Tse, a famous writer, commit suicide with his wife, jumped into the lake. Yang Fongying, she was always purged until she died. She was, and she basically, Zhang Qing was jealous of her, very famous actress of Wang Meidao, a Chinese way of opera, and she died. I think she committed suicide after a lot of purging by taking pills. And also Fu Lei and his wife, the famous translator, his son Fu Chong was a famous pianist that they famously wrote letters to their kids, his son and daughter, and it was really sad to read, and you can still read it. And I always mention at the final entry, the final, put it this way, they left a suicide note when they decided to commit suicide because they were translators, they knew English really well, and they were being targeted. And when they commit suicide, they left a suicide note to their relative and telling him what to do if they could to help them. And the first item I still remember very clearly is that to pay the rent, they left behind rents that they're going to pay. They own the landowner, but because they're committing suicide, they can't pay the rent. So they asked the relative to give the money to the landlord. And who would do that? You're dying and then you worry about not paying rent. This people with high standard, with high morality, integrity, and these are the people who are being purged and losing their lives. So what was such a loss to the country? Another writer, a friend of Lu Shibajin, he would write after the Cultural Revolution, published in a book called "There's No God." This is his collection, but he wrote a kind of a short piece about his experience during Cultural Revolution. He said, "I can clearly remember myself turning from a human to a beast. Some people told me that it was nothing but a 10-year-long dream. But will we relive the dream again? If not, why? My heart is still aching, still bleeding, but I'm adamant that I don't want to dream again. I will not forget that I am a human. I've determined not to descend to beasthood again. Doesn't matter who is hitting my back with a whip, I would refuse to go into a dream again. Surely I would not believe in another dreamy tale either." At the end, he said, when there's no God, there's no beast either. We are all human. Of course, in this case, God was Mao. Mao was deified, and he was turned into a god to be worshipped. And so everyone else was being kind of demoted as beasts, as animals. And he was in the so-called, he used beasts because they were sent to the countryside. He was in, and when you send the countryside to get re-educated, they call that the cow barn. So that's why they oftentimes they would be called the beasts. Okay, so That's the sadness of Cultural Revolution, and it lasts for 10 years, 66 to 76. Now, sorry for this long background. Now back to Hong Kong and Macau. So why did I spend so long talking about Chinese history in this case? It's really because the rise in Hong Kong in 67 was really a following up, of the development of Cultural Revolution, and it has to do with the unique positions of Macau and Hong Kong. The reason is that when Cultural Revolution broke out, they remember in Macau and Hong Kong, they were they were under the rules of British and Portuguese, but they have Chinese officials there with for example, the New China Agency, the Xinhua News Agency. And these people start worrying because what happened if I return to China? Because I'm now in this bourgeoisie or this capitalist cities of Hong Kong and Macau, and I have been living this capitalist life. Okay, if I'm sent back to China, I will be the best target because I am an official. I make good money, but I've been enjoying rather peaceful life. In Hong Kong and Macau, away from the famine, away from all this craziness in China. But how about if I got sent back? If I had to retire, I got sent back, I will be purged. My family will be in danger. If I don't do anything, I will be, one part of the counter-revolutionaries. So the best way to save themselves is that if we stage something in Macau and Hong Kong in support of the Cultural Revolution, then when I go back, in the future, people can't say that I am being different. They can't say that I did nothing while enjoying the capitalist life in Hong Kong and Macau. So they want to do something. They want to start, but they need an excuse. So what they need is that they need something that seems to be that the leftist organization could support. And when we can support, we can stage something similar so that whether we are successful or not, we can say that we try, okay? We try to do this, so you can't say that we didn't do anything. So what happened is that in Macau, the excuse was because in Macau, there always been interaction between the local leftists with the Portuguese government. The Portuguese government had for some time actually want to leave and give Macau back because Macau was no longer the Macau back in the days of the Canton system. So they didn't make as much money, but they need to put in resources, and there's always some crazy leftist elements, patriotic Chinese in Macau. So they didn't really, not very fond of, ruling over Macau, but there's also no reason to return it either. But they would it's not like strongly in support of controlling Macau at that point already. What happened is that oftentimes there will be corruption, and the leftists or Chinese there will want to build something, for example, a school, the leftist schools to educate the Macau people to be more, Chinese thinking or more mainland thinking. So what happens is one time there's a delay in the building of a private school, a leftist private school, and most likely they did not get the amount right. Corruption is going on. So what happens in the protest came out, the leftist organization or the underground organization got into action. So they say, okay, let's support them. When they support them, when they protest about it, they escalate. They say usually, some people just protesting, okay, you should speed up. They suddenly came out on force, okay? They wear the white shirts, they have the red armbands, there's shouting revolutionary slogans from the government being slow in building a school. The rhetorics become, down the colonial government, death to Portuguese, you are and counter-revolutionaries, long live Mao. So suddenly it escalates to a total different level, to the point to kind of shake, the colonial government was shaken. At one point, when lots of big crowds start gathering, the Portuguese military garrison opened fire and killing 8 people. And at that point, it was no return. So as I mentioned before, for example, just like during the time in the 1920s in Shanghai, when the firing. So usually it was we can't tell what happened, but quite sure that the Garrison Party did not do it on purpose. Likely, they're pressing and someone pulled a trigger, and some got scared and pulled a trigger. So because you were not going to shoot down all these people, and you should just fire in the air to scare them, right? But usually, quite sure that a lot of the time is not intended, okay? Because usually things just get a lot worse when you start shooting at people in those days. But it did. 8 people die, and then Beijing issued really stern warning, and they start sending gunboats, not big ones. They start sending gunboats to the coast of Macau, and at that point, the Macau government basically backed down. They weren't very strong in the design holding Macau, and definitely not ready to fight Communist China. So what happened is that they backed down and said, "Okay, fine, you can have it back." But then, very interestingly, China did not. So it actually shows the kind of the cards of China. China never intended to take back Macau and Hong Kong before the right time. The same, as I mentioned in previous classes, that is for long-term consideration and for full utilization. 長期打算充分利用. So it's the idea, is Mao's strategy for Hong Kong and Macau. So keep it in the hands, we're always saying that we are not giving the land to you, we're not giving the cities to you, but we want you to hold on to it, so that we can, continue to connect with the world. And this is exactly what happened during the embargo, for example, in the 50s following Korean War, that Hong Kong became this important place where resources could be smuggled into China. So China won Hong Kong and Macau in the hands of Britain and Portugal, at least for now, until one good time will be, the end of the lease, which will be 97 for Hong Kong and 99 for Macau. So they didn't want to, do anything yet. So what happens is that when the Macau government say, "Okay, you can have it back," China actually say no. Okay, China just say, "Okay, okay, we're just going to work closely. So we're going to have people in the government or connect really closely with you, telling you what we like and what we don't like." So the Macau government became a lame duck government, and there's a lot of pro-CCP, people in it, and giving them advices starting from that time on. So making sure that they're not doing anything silly, okay? So you're not suddenly become a democracy, you're not suddenly become a create, voting rights and whatever, they're not going to do that. So the top person that served like that. So this is a delicate. On one hand, you were saying that Macau is still in the hands of Portugal, but then you also want Macau to listen to you. So they didn't want any, official signing, but they just use it doing a under the table arrangement to have a businessman to always become an advisor to the Macau government. So that person is Hou Yin. He would go there, for example, taking things from for example, the China News Agency, and go to talk to the Macau government and tell them what to do. So this development is not desirable, and how to do it. Okay, we're going to build this port, or renovate. How can we go ahead with it? What kind of laws? Okay, this laws is not desirable in the eyes of China. You shouldn't do this. So they start meddling with the Macau government policies, and his son eventually would become the first chief executive of Macau, the special administrative region, in 1999. So basically, that's why Macau, if you look at Hong Kong, Macau, China trusts Macau a lot more than Hong Kong, because Macau has been being run with the approval of China for quite some time. So for China, Macau is not a threat. Hong Kong was, because Hong Kong was not like Macau, in which they could have their say for quite some time. Now, what is really important was that if you look at the what happened in Hong Kong is very similar. The Hong Kong China news agencies and the establishment, the party members, or the underground establishment wanted to do something, but it turned out to be totally different, the outcome. So what happened is that in Hong Kong, they also want to use excuse to stage something to show that they are echoing the Cultural Revolution. So in Hong Kong, it came to now the Macau event happened in 1966, right after, as soon as the Cultural Revolution started in China, and it started the big protest was on December 3rd. So it's usually called the December 3rd incident or 123 incident. Hong Kong, it was different because British show a much greater desire to hold on to Hong Kong. Hong Kong was still doing really well. Economy is thriving, and other Western countries still want Hong Kong to be in the hands of Britain because Hong Kong serves as a really important gateway of the world to China and China to the world. So Britain did not want to give up Hong Kong. There was very big difference. So what happened is in Hong Kong, it started in 1967 in May, when there's a labor dispute in the artificial flowers factory in San Pokong, and the workers were going on strike and protesting. But then suddenly they saw something different. Usually the workers protesting, it will be smaller number, and they will be in their casual clothing or workers' clothing. But this time, suddenly a bunch of white shirts join in with their armbands. So everything tells them that this is a cultural revolutionary inspired protest. Of course, the Hong Kong establishment understood that the British were harder to deal with. Hong Kong was not Macau, but they felt all the pressure, even more pressure in the world to do something because of the successes of the revolutionaries in Macau, to the point that the Macau government bend their knees, okay, and submit to their requests, okay. So we had to do something in Hong Kong. Otherwise, when they compare, we'll be in an even worse situation if they compare us to Macau. So they went out in force, okay, not only in force and protesting, and when the police clashing. Now in Hong Kong, there's no shooting, okay. So the Hong Kong police were smarter, and they were more restrained. So there's no clashing, there's no shooting, but there will be clashes, okay, and beating and clashing. And so following that protest, the so-called the leftists came out on force, and they will be in the same clothing, and they marched to the governor's house to protest and to put on they call it the big letter post, in protest wordings, and they'll go and shout slogans. So everything showed that this is not a labor movement, or at least they're not just a labor movement. It's a labor movement induced post-revolutionary protest in the cultural revolutionary style, because as you can see in this next clip very clearly, looks very different. The slogans are very different. Slogans no longer rights for the workers, more like long live Chairman Mao, China will be invincible, long live revolution, like that. So that's why I told you about the 66 riots and the disturbances. 66 is purely about livelihood. It's about protests about the hike in rates. So even the Chinese news agency said no to it. So this is just a few months ago. Almost a year ago. So the Chinese news agency was complaining, against this rioting because they felt that it's disturbing the economy, the city. But now the Chinese news agency is fully behind it, and all the leftist newspapers are fully behind it. Daigong, Manhui, they all denouncing the Hong Kong government, denouncing the British government. They're all in support of this so-called, workers' protest. So the change in attitude showed that the nature of the protest is very different. Now it becomes part of the Cultural Revolution happening in China, in Hong Kong, as you see in this short clip. So sorry, no narration and no sound. Too bad. It's from Associated Press. Very precious footage, especially now. Later on, Hong Kong government and others try to hide this history, or not to the point erase it, at least make it indifferent, and not consequential. But I would love to have a clip that has the sound, because I really want to hear what they were saying. But you can definitely guess they were reading from the red books, the little red books of Mao, the reading posts of Mao, and they're protesting. They were shouting slogans. They would be protesting about China's, the Hong Kong government treatment of workers, and extend it to make it more like a fight against the working class people, the struggle against the capitalists. So to elevate the whole thing, just like what they did in Macau. And in Hong Kong, they're doing that. But Hong Kong police show a lot more readiness to control, and they will be watching them closely. So in Hong Kong, it's different. Macau was like half-hearted, they would send troops to try to put down the rioting and the protests, but in and fail. But in Hong Kong, it shows a lot more readiness to match. And so what happened is that the Hong Kong government also asked among themselves, so what's going on? Is this Chinese government censored, or is it just local leftists wanting to show loyalty to the government, to China, saying that they're doing something in Hong Kong as well? So these unclassified documents say that they were talking about, they were debating. They understand that very early on, the Gang of Four, they're more about destruction. They're willing to sacrifice the benefits derived from Hong Kong to China, getting a lot of economic benefits from Hong Kong. They also understood that the Red Guards were crazy, so they would be willing to sacrifice that to sabotage the Hong Kong economy. While the second group is basically just trying to avoid, disrupt. The second group is just trying to go through the motion. So they're trying to go through the motion. They're trying to show that they support Mao's call for cultural revolution, but did not really want to go that far. So in the beginning, they were debating who was in charge in the Hong Kong. Were they those who were really trying to sabotage, or just trying to, march and show the world that they are also revolutionary, and so, but did not want to go further? Because the response will be different. If it's first group, then that means the Hong Kong police should really have a stronger action against it, because these people are not aiming for just a talk or protest. They're really aiming for to disrupt Hong Kong, right? To cause harm. But if the second one, then the response should not be too great. Because if they're just showing up, to march through, put their clothing on, shout their slogans, and then return home. But if you hit them too hard, arrest them, punish them, beat them up, it will be the opposite response. You will get more anger from the Chinese. Okay, so the British government is deciding, the colonial government is deciding what to do. How to assess which group is this. Okay, which group is behind the protesters of Hong Kong. But gradually, the protests widen and getting more, you can say, violent. And the first stage eventually would come to a announcement of the leftists of calling on a general strike. So they remember what happened in 1925 when the striking workers returned to China and Hong Kong was crippled, and the colonial government eventually had to, compromise and to discuss with the workers. So they want something like that. They want to get results like what they could in Macau. So some kind of a backing down of the Hong Kong government. In that case, they can say that, oh, we have succeeded. Okay, they're backing down. As they saw in Macau, the Chinese government probably not ready to take back Hong Kong yet, just like they didn't take back to Macau, but they want something like that. They want to have a representative in the Hong Kong government that would be, expressing the views of the Chinese government. The Hong Kong government would be more agreeable. So they keep upping the pressure. So during the protest, sometimes they throw stones, they overturn cars, they burn buses, and they also announced this strike, okay, general strike, and that they claim to be, 60,000 people would take part. The reason is that during the time when a big number of migrants came down to Hong Kong, many of them will work on, lower paid jobs, and a lot of this will be in public sector. For example, driving the buses, the trams, the ferries, and in other public works and public sector. So a lot of time will be, for example, in transportation. A lot of these workers will be there, and a lot of them were new migrants and refugees. So the leftists at that point, the underground leftist organization in Hong Kong, they tried a lot to help them. As we saw last time, that they would be a leftist community. They watch leftist movies and read leftist newspapers and go to leftist department stores and send the kids to leftist schools, right? So that leftist organization has been building up. And they were for some time really doing solid work to help the new migrants, because they will be helping them, offering them helps, advices, schooling for the kids. And so they were doing so. So the workers, a lot of them were sympathetic to the leftists. So when they call for general strikes, they believe that these workers would turn to them and help them. And they were saying that, okay, we're going to have this, we're going to cripple Hong Kong. But turned out it didn't. And it wasn't, they didn't get the support that they were hoping for. And yes, even though some of the workers echo, and came out to support, but not all of them. And that, despite the Chinese government seems to also be backing. Now, as mentioned, the Hong Kong government was questioning whether this riot, who's behind this rioting. Is it of the more radical wing or the less radical wing? Okay, the belief is that it's probably just localized. So mainland China, the Foreign Office probably not into helping them. But at that time, the Foreign Office in China also under pressure. And Zhou Enlai, Chen Yi was sacked for some time, the Foreign Ministry, and Zhou Enlai, as a premier, was under pressure because Mao want to give the Red Guards more power. So Zhou Enlai was under the pressure from Mao, to not to interview with the actions of the Red Guards, and so that including what's going on in Hong Kong. So as the Hong Kong police keep clashing with the more violent of the rioters, Zhou Enlai issued a statement that the people of China have determined to give the country living Hong Kong countrymen the utter support according to the needs of the situation until final victory is achieved. The fate of Hong Kong is decided by the country loving Hong Kong countrymen and the 700 million Chinese people, and naturally not by a small number of British imperialists. So what happened is that Zhou Enlai make the announcement on the day when they're supposed to have the general strike. So it seems like he is supporting them. It seems like the Chinese government is supporting them. So it's supposed to be a big boost to this general strike. But turned out it was not that successful. So what happened is that the public sector transit services were seriously affected, but not the other areas. So turns out a lot of the workers, only those who are really leftist in their inclination, support. Many workers, even though they came from China, did not. And the reason was, I won't say simple, was that they saw what they're doing, and it's very clear that these rioters trying to cause trouble and cripple Hong Kong. And also the rhetoric saying that, we want to return to China and we want Hong Kong to be, under Chinese rule, we want Hong Kong to be revolutionaries. But what they saw in China is chaos. People, going up, people being purged. Remember, this is already almost a year after the beginning of Cultural Revolution. And they saw what's going on. People purged, they heard news about their relatives being targeted, there are people being sent on the streets, sent to the countryside. And also, they start seeing bodies. At that time, their bodies coming down along the coast. People died, and so they knew that during the purging, sometimes it's not just verbal abuse, it's not just hitting them, it's just not sending them to the countryside. Sometimes it's murder, and people dying, and people got bound and then thrown into the water, and Hong Kong starts seeing bodies coming down from China. So everyone was scared, and they remember why they came to Hong Kong. They came to Hong Kong because they want to have a better living. They want to, make an honest living, and they want to have new opportunities. Now, in the beginning, you can say in May, in early June, some people were having the attitude, they may not be leftists, but they held the attitude that, it's good that the British got taught a lesson. The good that the colonial government got taught a lesson, because they have been, they've been arrogant, they've been helping the industrialists, they've been helping the entrepreneurs. It's been the entrepreneurs getting the, all the rights. So it's good that the people coming out and teach them a lesson, But teaching a lesson is not like crippling Hong Kong and destroying the Hong Kong, this safe haven from all the chaos in China. So when they see that they ask for general strike, and later even more, they start setting up bombs, try to disrupt Hong Kong and destroy the colony, Hong Kong people start turning against them, By the general strike, the failure of general strike already showed the trend, okay? They didn't want to take part. And also more is that when the second stage is when the general strike failed, but the rioters saw that the China seems to be backing them. They got no other way but to get more violent. And the way of getting more violent is to start planting bombs, new real or fake bombs, and which they call the pineapples everywhere. And at that time, they called the bombs pineapple. So they would try to paralyze Hong Kong. If the general strike did not paralyze Hong Kong, I'm going to plant bombs, okay, so that people's life would be disrupted. They would want to stay home, and they would want to, and so the rhythm of Hong Kong would be interrupted. So this is what happened. If you can see the numbers, you can see a lot of the public sector in the lower paid jobs would have a higher, this is the percentage of people get fired after the riot, after rioting, after June, okay? So what happened is that a big number, 100% of the staff dairy workers were laid off and rehired. Now, tells us two things. First of all, is that many of the lower paid jobs workers were more, left inclining, so they want to help. But much better paid job, for example, government departments, they're getting stable jobs, stable income. They didn't want to take part. So even though they're working class, they didn't want to take part. They didn't believe in disrupting. And secondly, is that they could fire all these people, showing that it's still easy to find workers. So I can fire all these leftist rioters, but then I can still hire them workers back very quickly. So it was very Hong Kong is very ready. So the British were not in such a danger, or you can say colonial government was not in such a danger of losing control of Hong Kong, because you still have a lot of people who appreciate Hong Kong as a land of opportunities, as a land for them to escape from the chaos in the left. So in addition to the people against communists, against leftists, the rightists, or the entrepreneurs, you have more and more Hong Kong people supporting the British government. They may be, sitting on the fence for some time, or they can be in the middle. They weren't very against Chinese, but they weren't very supportive of China either, or they were kind of indifferent. But now more and more turn to support the government, because they didn't want them to destroy their homeland. They didn't want this crazy leftist, radical leftist to go out and start bombing people, killing people, whether fake or not. They didn't want them to disrupt Hong Kong. Now, as the situation escalates, the colonial government also need to make a decision to what to do. At that point, there's also a different turn, is that the governor, David Trench, went back to England. Now, many of the reporting always portrayed Trench as a strong defender of Hong Kong against the rioters. But in reality, according to my research, which unfortunately I haven't finished in writing my paper, Trench was kind of torn, because he seems to be the culprit in this case, because the leftists felt that he was the leader of Hong Kong government against the Chinese, but the British government also didn't want him to sabotage the relationship between Hong Kong or Britain and China. So the foreign ministry was cautioning the colonial government, and so either side, he seems to be the kind of scapegoat, that he didn't start it, but somehow everyone hated him. So he was so concerned that he left for Britain in the heat of the matter in late June, and did not return until late September, when everything starting to settle. So he was gone. Now, leaving behind at that point the acting governor Michael Gass and the deputy colonial secretary Jack Cater, and the both of them were more hardliners in a way to deal with the rioters, because they were betting that, yes, Zhou Enlai announced that, but it doesn't seem like they have the support. And either way, Hong Kong is going to be ruined if we don't do anything. So doesn't matter who is behind this group. Doesn't matter what they get the sanction of the they get the approval of the foreign department or not. We're going to do something. So they start taking a more hardliner approach, and also for right reason, because they were starting to have clashes there. For example, in Sa Tau Gong post, when the maybe PLA, the People's Republic, PLA, People's Liberating Armies, disguising as civilians, firing at the police station in the border and killing 5 people, killing 5 policemen. So it was a very difficult um, uh, things happening, because when people were um, firing at the police and people die, this an escalation. So what happened is that at that time there's even a secret evacuation plan being discussed in Hong Kong, and the thought is that, okay, if we gave up, so we're going to who are we going to do? Who are we going to send away? So it was a very difficult plan, because it has to be top secret, because anytime they announce a evacuation, some kind of evacuation, the confidence on Hong Kong will collapse, and people would start, and the colonial government will lose control of the colony for sure. So it has to be top secret, but evacuation plan is something big, right? It cannot be top secret. It cannot be just 5 people knowing it, because you have to talk about coordination, about the military, the police, the government, getting documents, whatever, So it was just a plan that floated around the top officials as top secret, okay? But now we learn about it with the declassified information. And the British, even at one point, because Americans kept telling them to stay in Hong Kong, the British at one point, very interesting, asked them whether they want to make some kind of a nuclear statement to kind of, guarantee that if Hong Kong was attacked by the communists, because there were a lot of rumors about Chinese government sending troops. Now, the firing of the police seems like there may be a chance of the Chinese government trying to use military force, okay, to support the rioters, okay. So there was a concern about that, and there's also leftist newspapers announcing that the Chinese gunboats are being sent to Hong Kong, and they will take action just like they did in Macau very soon. So a lot of concern, to the point that the British government even asked the Americans, okay, if you want, is it possible for you to, maybe make an announcement of, if Hong Kong being attacked, the Americans may use nuclear weapon to protect it, and of course the Americans say no. Okay, so this document also say the Americans would not very willing and would be very unlikely to be willing to give a new public nuclear guarantee for Hong Kong. No, for our own reason would we wish them to do so. Now the point is, they say that it's kind of like, yeah, we're not going to ask them to do it. It's going to escalate the situation. But the fact is that it's being mentioned. It means that the idea has been floated around. So what happened is that, so this really prompted, as mentioned, a lot of decision making, and with David Trent left, Michael Gass and Jack Cater decide to take a more hardliner, and they decide that a lot of things we are being really responsive. They come out riots, we stop them. They put on bombs, we disarm it, we discover it, we try to assure. So, but we are not taking initiative. We are being reactive. So they want to take initiative. So they knew that a lot of the people, the rioters stationed in North Point, which was kind of like the center of all the leftists. So they used some of the department store to plan all the protests. And so they actually sent a helicopter from the warship and to storm the leftist stronghold in the North Point, to land on top of the department store and then storm, and they find in their publishing, press to publish slogans. They find publications. They find even a clinic in there, so that when the rioters got hurt, they wouldn't go to the hospital and risk being arrested, but they could be, taken care of in the clinic. So they busted, and next they also went up to close down small leftist newspapers. The Hong Kong Evening News, 香港夜報, the Noon News, and the 田豐日報, the 10 Fung Daily. So they closed them down. Now, the Hong Kong government would not dare to close down the bigger leftist newspaper because that would be a declaration of war. Like Wenhui and Daigong. But the smaller one, they want to close it down because the small one has been spreading false news ever since the start of the riots, saying that Chinese is coming down to hear that, every day I've read those newspapers when I did my research, and so they would say, okay, we saw gunboats coming, okay, so Hong Kong leftists rise up, okay, you pick up your arms and hit at the police, don't worry, the soldiers are helping. We saw 50,000 troops, massing in the border, they're ready to rush in. So a lot of during that time, and also with all the bombs, fake and real, so there's a lot of rioting, chaos, and uncertainty going on. So the Hong Kong government decided to close them down. So this is the clip about them closing again in the Associated Press clip that unfortunately doesn't have any narration. But that was definitely a big move because they didn't know that not only the Hong Kong government was not backing down, the Hong Kong government was stepping up its actions against the rioters. Now, so that create a trigger effect in two ways. One way is that the Red Guards in mainland saw what's happening, and they want to give the Chinese, the leftists in Hong Kong more support. So they declare a ultimatum. So they say that if you do not allow the three leftist newspapers to reopen in 48 hours, we are going to attack the British, basically an embassy in Beijing, okay? The Red Guards will attack it, okay? So we give you 48 hours. And when the Hong Kong government did not reinstate, allowing them to reopen, the Red Guards did. They went to the British embassy and burned it down and arrest the staff there, including the ambassador. So it suddenly escalated into a country-to-country incident. First, it was just leftists starting riots in Hong Kong, and the government, even including the foreign ministry under, Zhou Enlai would agree because he made the statement in June, right? But suddenly, it became an international big incident. Secondly, is that when the Hong Kong government refused to allow the leftist newspapers to reopen, they step up their terrorist action. In the beginning, it was just planting bombs. So sometimes they're real. There's some policemen got killed because of bomb when they tried to remove it. And then some expert got killed as well. Some bomb. The dismantling experts were killed as well. But the usually it's just like that planning. It's not the real attack. Also, there's no attacking of the government agencies or offices. But then situation changed when on the 20th, there's a young siblings got killed in North Point. Now the leftists keep saying that it's probably a bomb planned by the Hong Kong police or something, because North Point is a place where the lots of leftists there, but likely to be is an accident that the bomb was left there and the young siblings were playing with it, and then it blew up and killed the two young siblings. So it was big. The Hong Kong people was very angry about this incident, and they were even more angry when a very famous broadcaster, Lam Ban, was assassinated. He was driving his car. He was a famous broadcaster of the commercial radio, and he was often make fun of the leftists, okay? And he even named his show called you Babalan, means that you cannot, it's a Chinese proverb means that you cannot stop. But the word ba actually sounds the same as the word for striking in Chinese. So what he's saying is that he's named his show that is to ridicule the leftists, saying that you want to stage a strike, but no one really echo you, no one support you, so now you're giving up. So every day he's ridiculing them, calling them leftist 左仔 in Cantonese, and saying how stupid they are. So the leftists were really angry. So one day they fake to be construction worker. They saw how he drove his Beetle to work, and so they fake as construction worker. So they stopped his car when he was coming up to this construction site, and they pour petroleum into the car and set it on fire. And he and his cousin were killed as a result. And there was a big thing because he was a very famous broadcaster. He starred in at least one movie, I remember, and so he was well known, and his voice was really well known. So when he was murdered, the public attitude changed. In addition to the killing of the young siblings, and in China, the mood also changed because when the British embassy was burned and the diplomats were imprisoned, Zhou Enlai went to Mao and said, looks like it's going too far. And Mao agreed. So what happened is that Mao, again, quietly sanctioned, basically allow Zhou Enlai to crack down, to tune it down, okay? So he agreed with Zhou Enlai and said, okay, you get my approval to tune it down. So what happened is that in October, the wording changed 180 degrees. In June, Zhou Enlai said that their total support of the rioters or the leftists in Hong Kong. But in October, he suddenly said the rise was a mistake, a blind shift to the left, and was opposite against the revolutionary direction of Chairman Mao and Party Central. So suddenly, it changed. It changed the tone and totally twisted and saying that okay, this is wrong. So many of the Hong Kong rioters, the leftists, actually felt betrayed, and that sentiment went on for years because they felt that in June you say it's okay, but now in October you said it's a mistake. So you're giving up, you're deserting us while we need the help most. So what happened is that China officially turned against the leftist rioters. The Hong Kong people turned against the Chinese leftists because of the violence, because of their intention to just no longer just a labor movement. It's not for the rights. It's about staging a revolution in Hong Kong. It's about leftist ideology, revolutionary ideology that not all Hong Kong people, not all Hong Kong workers agree with, let alone those against communist ideology. So they were against it, and even the most moderate Hong Kong people turned against that because now you're killing people, now you're murdering people. Your express purpose is nothing but to create riots in Hong Kong. We want to live in Hong Kong. We don't want to go back to China. We don't want to end up like being purged. We don't want to end up like being one of those bodies flowing downstream. So what's wrong with you guys? So basically they turned against them. So this is the beginning of the the formation of a sense of, we are no longer, in the beginning, many of them were, they were not as transient as those people in Hong Kong in the early 20th century. But at least, because with the closing of the border, they weren't transients, but they still felt, you can kind of say, transnational, okay? We are still Chinese. We care about what happened in China, even though we're living in Hong Kong. We're not moving around. We stay in Hong Kong, but we, are we Hong Konger? Are we Hong Kong people? Because there's no reason to separate, right? We can be a Chinese, just living in Hong Kong. We're just no longer going back to Hong Kong, China, but we're still Chinese, okay? We still speak Chinese. We still look Chinese. We still eat Chinese food, okay? We're still caring about what happened in mainland. But the Cultural Revolution and the rioting in Hong Kong drive people apart, okay? Create this polarization of people. Those who support them seems to be more and more radical, and even those who are more moderate, starting to support the Hong Kong government in stopping the riots, in purging, in ending the riots. And the Hong Kong government, I'm not going to go into details. You can read from my article. At that time, supposed to stage a festival of fashion, but they turned into Hong Kong Week. And it came really timely because it was almost the end um, of the riots, and it was the Hong Kong weekend, supposed to be still just a celebration of Hong Kong products. But the Hong Kong government thought that maybe it's a good time to celebrate the Hong Kong community as well. So it's still mainly about Hong Kong products, trying to get people to still do business with Hong Kong. But they expand the celebration, and they use a term that used previously by some of the festivals. For example, the products, the Hong Kong Manufacturer Association Goods and Products Festival, which is the Hong Kong people use Hong Kong goods. So it was more like intended in the beginning to promote Hong Kong people use Hong Kong products. It's for exports and it's for internal consumption purpose. It's really to promote Hong Kong products. But when they start using the Hong Kong people, the terms Hong Kong people, and then the Hong Konger, Hong Kong products, it frustrated the leftists because the leftists has been using revolutionary terms. Okay, they felt that when the colonial government start talking about Hong Konger and Hong Kong week, that means that they are against them. So they start criticizing the ideas of a Hong Konger or Hong Kong week. And they have cartoons saying that, when you celebrate Hong Kong week, that means that you think about the Hong Kong country. So you mean talking about breaking away from China. And also one of the cartoons show that this is David Tran. Okay, if you call yourself Hong Konger, that means that you are, traitors, you are, the bad elements in society, all these bad people. Now, by identifying Hong Kongers or Hong Kong week as excuse me, as against Chinese, the rioters or the leftists were really pitching a impossible choice for the Hong Kong people of Hong Kong. So if you do not agree with the revolutionaries, if you do not with rioting, then you are bad elements. So even if you say I'm just living in Hong Kong, I'm moderate, I'm not political, you can be. If you're not supporting us, you're on the British Hong Kong side, that means that you are you're not patriotic. So this is what happened. So it's this kind of mentality that pushed a lot of Hong Kong people towards the British government. And as a result, a lot of the previously, you can say, indifferent or politically moderate people or indifferent people start to voice their support of Hong Kong government. So basically, suddenly, this rhetorics of the leftist alien people to a point is that it start to create this concept about Hong Kong. So as my argument in my article is that Hong Kong was not created because they have an idea of what Hong Kong was like. It's more like what Hong Kong was not like. So Hong Kong was not a rioter, was not a leftist, was not someone trying to destroy the colony. So that's not Hong Kong. So Hong Kong should be someone who support should be against this rioting. So what happened is that the riots not only damaged the leftist underground machine because everyone came on surface, and the Hong Kong government knew, this school is actually supporting rioting. This department store is actually has also leftists there. So a lot of them, got damaged, and they lost their support, and they lost their money, they lost their financial backing, and also create lots of fear in the nation. So a lot of the time, the Hong Kong people start turning against them, and they also turn against Chinese politics. So for the next 2 decades, a lot of times they try not to, go too much into politics because, or at least because, well, for sure they're staying away from Chinese politics, but they also gave the impression, especially in the 70s, that Hong Kong people were not political. But we know that it's not true because in the 50s and 60s, there are lots of Chinese politics on Hong Kong soil. But in the 70s, they're focusing on living, they're focusing on developing the economy, developing the city. Okay, so try to stay away from that. And also, it also create a new sense of what the Hong Kongers was, as mentioned. Okay, the Hong Kongers would be those who were not supporting the riots. And so Jack Cater said it really well. He said Hong Kong people did not really love the British more at the end of the riots, but they loved the leftists and the radicals in PRC less at the time. So this created a very interesting sense of the emergence of the Hong Kongers and the business. An Indian business leader in Hong Kong said that we find ourselves more of a community than ever before. The real people of Hong Kong, wonderfully, ever he already made it quite clear just where the loyalties lay. Okay, so meaning that it's not like Hong Kong is a Chinese that speak Cantonese, that do certain things, make so much money, how educated it is. The Hong Kongers are all these people who lump together, who unite together against leftist radical views and leftist revolutionary ideas. So that created so the Hong Kong is a product of contradistinction. So basically it's just identifying themselves against the left radical elements of China or the leftists. So Hong Kong can be a Caucasian, it can be an Indian descent, it can be a Cantonese speaking Chinese. It doesn't matter. As long as you believe that Hong Kong should be safe and peaceful, and you argue against this radicalism happening in China, you are a Hong Konger. You are real people of Hong Kong. So this is the beginning of the emergence of the concept of Hong Kong, thanks to the radicalism of the leftists pushing them towards that. But as we'll see next week, it just still doesn't tell us what Hong Kong is, right? It just tells us what Hong Kong is not, okay? So what is the real elements of Hong Kong? What create Hong Kongers? What's the characteristics, features of Hong Kong? That will come in the 70s. So the 70s will be a time of the forging of the characteristics of Hong Kongers, and which will be our topic next time.